Good evening and welcome to the Franchise Tag Podcast with me, your host, Freddie Hall. We are back again after a couple of weeks off. I know Andrew and Adam have been doing some shows as well with the Combine and looking at players, looking at also mocking the mock drafts as well. However, today's going to be brass tacks of the free agent frenzy. Free agency is officially open and it's going crazy already. Even the crazy moves that we know may be coming, hopefully on this show tonight. Hint, hint, nudge, nudge, Aaron Rodgers maybe. We're going to be looking at a lot of the free agency stuff today, some of the trades as well that have happened. It is going to be definitely a program where we're going to be weaving, ducking and diving and going left and right, because I will be keeping my Twitter constantly scrolling and updating to see what the latest news is. But we're going to dive right into it. The latest news, which has happened in the last 2 minutes, obviously very much relevant for one of our resident podcasters here, Andrew Manning, is that Darren Waller, tight end for the Las Vegas Raiders, has just been traded to the New York Giants for a third-round pick number 100, actually. That is the pick for the Giants received for Kadarius Toney when they sent him to the Kansas City Chiefs. So some people are saying they've traded Kadarius Toney for Darren Waller. Immediate reaction, Andrew. We've been chatting just about it off camera, but immediate thoughts on this trade for Darren Waller, who, when fit, top 5 tight end in the league, is a real menace in the offense.
Yeah, I think that's the way you've got to look at it as well. When he is fit, he is fantastic, because there was no other reason why in my head I was going, when I saw it, I was like, tight end? Really? You know, is that kind of what we need? But then when you look at who it is and if he does stay fit, what a fantastic player and a great addition. Looks like we're going down the route of running the ball maybe a bit more, protecting Daniel Jones, using his legs. So the young Daniel Bellinger and Darren Waller tight ends, 2 solid tight ends there, seems to be the direction we might be going in. So it's a great addition. I really like it. I just thought there was other areas we probably needed immediate, but we've had a good free agency so far. We brought in 2 big names, which is fantastic for us to attract them with such a fresh team. So really, really happy so far.
The second big name being Bobby Okereke, the middle linebacker, which I thought was a really astute move. So I'm sure we'll talk about that at some point. I should also add that obviously we are live, so slammy comments in the video as well. We'll chat about them on here. Lots of obviously free agency and lots of rumours, spinning around as well at the minute. So maybe if you want to ask our opinion on that, feel free to jump in the comments there. Adam, Darren Waller off to the New York Giants, maybe an area that they didn't need to focus on, but how are you feeling about this trade?
It feels a bit of a strange one. I think everyone seems very, this is an amazing move. I thought Bellinger had done pretty well when he was fit, and it wasn't really a injury, as in it was an eye injury, so it wasn't something that was mega serious as when it comes to playing football. But it feels. He's a great player. If you can keep him fit, it'd be great. It's a 3rd-round pick that they've given up for him. So it's a bit of a punt on trying to keep someone, trying to keep him fit. So I hope he does well. And I suppose really, like I said before we came on, it feels like a win now move. And I'm not 100% sure that the Giants are in that position, but maybe they'll try and bring in some other people as well.
Well, the immediate reaction from one Las Vegas Raiders, I've just popped open my Twitter, is Josh Jacobs saying, and apologise for the language, shit sad for real. So he's he's maybe a little bit upset with Derek Carr as quarterback and also Darren Waller leaving the Raiders. Of course, he's gained a quarterback in Jimmy Garoppolo. Again, something that we'll talk about, I'm sure, momentarily. Maybe we'll stick on the trade sort of talk for the time being. Seems as this Darren Waller trade's just happened. Another trade that happened just the other day, Jalen Ramsey also going for a 3rd-round pick from the Los Angeles Rams over to the Miami Dolphins. That now has a backfield of Jalen Ramsey, Xavier Howard, Javon Holland, who's one of my favorite safeties in the league. Adam, a bit of a out of the nowhere trade. It was sort of vaguely rumored that Ramsey may be on the move, and it's been rumored really with a lot of Rams players that they could be on the move. Is it sort of biting them in the arse a little bit, their game plan that they've been running with for so many years?
Just a little bit, just a tiny little bit. Now it's time to pay, isn't it? And hopefully it will take forever for them because they deserve it. It's one of them things where I think if you're going to go down this route and you're going to go all in, and they really did go all in, you need to get the win, which they did. And now you have to suffer the consequences of it, and you have to rebuild. And, it's all very much going to be around Cooper Kupp, Aaron Donald, and possibly Matthew Stafford. There's even talk about him maybe going somewhere else. But I think they're probably going to be the three guys that's going to be around. And they've got quite a lot of draft picks this year. So I think the plan is to try and sort of like just build the squad out in that way. I think it's going to be tough for them. They're going to have a tough couple of years and then go again, I think is probably what the plan will be. As for Ramsey, I can see why he wanted to go back. I mean, he played for Jacksonville, didn't he? So he's back in Florida. So yeah, I mean, it's not a bad move. Not many teams wanted him, is what the rumor seems to be going around, and so it wasn't so difficult for the Dolphins to pick him up. I think he's probably slightly past his best now, but he's still a very capable corner and an improvement in an area that the Dolphins probably did need. So only giving up a third round is probably not too bad.
And with Andrew, with the Giants trade we just said about, Adam said that it looked a bit like a win now trade. Is that the similar sort of feeling with this Jalen Ramsey trade? Because the Miami Dolphins were definitely snapping at the heels if it wasn't for the quarterback problems for most of the season in that AFC East. And how do you feel about this trade for Jalen Ramsey?
I mean, yeah, they were a great team last year. They were a good one to watch. So I think it's just a case of building on that momentum that they managed to produce last year by adding a couple of veteran pieces. I think it's nice. They've got a lot of youngsters there. So why not bring in a couple of veterans, teach your youngsters, look at the draft, see what you get there and roll again. And then just keep that sort of players rolling in and out. So if Ramsey's only there for a year, use him while you can and then bring in the next one. I think it's something that what you're talking about the Rams haven't done. They've just went all in, everyone gone. There was no middle ground. I think this points for Miami that there's kind of a plan to continue this rolling for many years rather than just a one and done or a win now scenario.
While we're on the subject, Waller is under contract for the Giants for 4 seasons. Salary going up in 2026 to $13.5 million. That's the max you're going to pay him in that whole 4-year span. So, what's that? 40, about 45 mil in total throughout that whole 4-year period. So a pretty decent contract to be able to pick up there. And I'm going to be eyes up and down whilst looking at my phone to keep updated with the Twitter. Another trade that hasn't happened just yet, Adam, and I will go back to you because obviously it centres around Aaron Rodgers, who has been the talk of the town since he went into the darkness, and he came back from the darkness and is telling nobody nothing. Apparently has a wish list of who he wants to be at the Jets with him, and that is the Green Bay Packers offense. It's Mercedes Lewis is apparently in the building there. Alan Lazard is in the building. Rumour is Randall Cobb's wanted. And also Odell Beckham Jr. is apparently a player that he wants over at the Jets as well. I mean, the Jets offensive unit must have been full of beans thinking about getting Aaron Rodgers. Now they're thinking, oh, well, am I even going to have a space left? Because he just wants all his guys in.
Well, it's Garrett Wilson, isn't it? It's the only one. The rest, no, none of them, they're all going to be going. Only Garrett Wilson's going to be the survivor, I think, the way that they're talking. I don't think they've got much at the tight end, to be honest, have they? And Mercedes Lewis is kind of a blocker anyway, so he's just going to be a bit extra. Cobb, I mean, they got rid of Berrios, so that would kind of make sense as pretty much the same sort of type of player. Lazard, Corey Davis, I suppose, would be the replacement for him. And so I suppose it kind of makes sense. It all sort of adds up, doesn't it? And I can see what they're doing. It'd be interesting to see what the eventual sort of like what they actually pay for him draft pick wise. I think that's the interesting thing and one thing that everyone is kind of waiting for. But I mean, been a Packers fan for too long, so we just wait for Rodgers to make up his mind and get on. We'll get on with it then. One thing I will say, be quite happy once it's over and he's gone.
Would you agree, Andrew? Because it is taking the mick at how long this is going on for. Like for the Jets organization, from sounds of it, it seems pretty much agreed, the package. It just seems like we're just waiting on Aaron to be Aaron. And it just feels, again, it's all about Aaron every off season. And finally something is happening. But the Jets surely just at this point want to be like, let's just get it done, so then we can focus on what we're going to do in the rest of our free agency period. Surely.
Yeah, I'm a little bit unsure of why they're jumping through so many hoops to sort of land this as well. He's a 39-year-old quarterback. There's going to be drama around him all year. There's going to be drama next year. So like they do 1 year with him. Maybe it doesn't work. Maybe it does. But then you have the off season next year. What's he going to do? Say, I want to be traded to the Vikings. He's got a scenario in his head. But yeah, why would you want to bring so much drama around your organization for one player that it may not work? And wouldn't it be perfect if they jump for all these hoops and then he went, oh, actually, I'm going to go to the Titans. I'm going to go to Houston, something like that. That would be the icing on the cake for me.
That posed an interesting question, though, because if he does just go deals off, don't want to go, what do the Jets then do? Because there's not really anyone left.
Start crying.
Yeah, but also as well, I'm not overly convinced the Packers want him in the building. So what do they do? Are they going to be that happy if that happens?
He retires. I think if they're your options. I think it's very much he's going to go or he's going to retire, and they seem to be the two main ones. He might try and come back, at which point, based on what the contracts are and stuff like that, it would kind of be in the Packers' interest to bring him back because you're going to end up paying more if you cut him. So I think in that respect, he would come back. But in reality, the fact that they've got, they're talking to Alan Lazard, who, in the nicest possible way, it feels like no one else is particularly that interested, which is a shame because I actually think Lazard is a decent receiver. But the other teams, they don't seem that bothered. It seems like the Jets are the main ones that are kind of talking to him purely because Rodgers has said so. They've done everything they can. I don't think the Jets could do any more. As Andrew was saying, they are jumping through hoops like crazy. They really are. It's like, they're bringing in coaches for him. They're bringing in players for him. I mean, he's basically taking over the building is essentially what's going on here. And so it feels like a bit of a strange one to do. But it does make them win now. If he goes in, they are win now. And this is what I mean with some of these other. I know that the other teams, they have to, do everything they can to make themselves as competitive as possible. But that AFC is packed already. And now you're going to put the Jets in it as well. And then you're going to have the Dolphins bringing people like Ramsey. And you sort of think, well, that makes them kind of almost like not as much win now, but you feel like they should be in the conversation and trying. It's very bizarre. There's a lot of teams that are kind of pushing all their chips in, and the Jets are, if they can get him, are probably doing that. But I don't know if it's necessarily going to work.
There's also another trade. Obviously, is out in the ether there because Austin Eckler and the LA Chargers seem to not being able to get a contract extension sort of sorted, Andrew, and he's asked to. It's requested to talk to teams about a trade. I think that has been granted as well, but he can talk to teams. What's the market for Austin Eckler out there, and where do you think he would be maybe going if we see a move?
Well, there's plenty of teams out there that are hunting for a running back in there, and one of that talent as well is a no-brainer. It saves you going to the draft. Obviously, we were talking that there might only be 2-3 guys from the draft this year that might be able to come in and play straight away and make an impact. So a guy like Eckler being on the market's really going to interest maybe the Bills, maybe the Bears. Any of those sort of need some help at running back. I think the Dolphins they've just re-signed Raheem Morris to another year, so maybe they're not really in the market. But it's a really odd one for me. He's such a talented player and such a guy that you'd want in your building, I think. So the unrest for him at the Chargers is a shock to me that there's something not quite right there. If players of his stature are saying, I want out, I'd like to be traded, it seems a bit odd.
Well, he wants to be paid, doesn't he? Mm-hmm. That is what it is. He wants to be paid, and they don't want to pay him because he's a running back. So that's pretty much what it is.
With Melvin Gordon, didn't they? he sat out for a year, didn't he? Because they wouldn't pay him. So they obviously don't like paying running backs. But
they also had two wide receivers, Mike Williams and Keenan Allen, couldn't keep on the field last year. And Eckler was their saving grace on offense. He was the only one running through. Herbert's a great quarterback, but it was the offense was running for Eckler. And you think, he's paid his dues, hasn't he? With his Chargers team, you'd have thought that.
I don't think that matters, though.
Depends on the money, doesn't it? Just depends on the money.
Yeah, I just don't think that matters. I think they have. It's funny. It's like Eckler's. I mean, I don't know. I don't know how you'd look at it, but to me, I would say Eckler is just as good as Saquon Barkley. Personally, I think they're both top-notch running backs, and because Saquon went as high as he did in the draft, he's earned a hell of a lot more money in his career so far than what Eckler did, who was undrafted. And I think it's almost like you have that stigma attached to you. Even you think of, say, like someone like Philip Lindsay, who was at the Broncos, was undrafted, did really well for the Broncos, but moved on to the Texans for a year and is now basically out of the league. I mean, I think it's a stigma that goes around with you if you're undrafted. And then also teams don't want to pay a lot for running backs. And I think that's what the problem is.
I think it's understandable to say that teams don't want to pay running backs because the shelf life on them is not fantastic. When you're talking sort of 27, 28 years old, you might be saying that, it's time to move on from someone and bring someone else in. But he's not the guy that you give the ball and tell him to run directly into the line every time. He's so dynamic in catching the ball that there's a lot more shelf life in wide receivers, and you're happy to pay the wide receivers. But equally for me, he's so involved in that receiving game that he's probably worth a bit more than a guy that just runs full throttle like a Derrick Henry into the line of scrimmage and gets whacked every time. So it's a bit of an odd one, but understand your reasonings behind it. But like I say, running backs don't have that shelf life, do they?
We would be hounded and chased with pitchforks if we didn't talk about the Chicago Bears, because the fans are going mental in Chicago.
Do we have to talk about the Chicago?
They're going mental. You're going to have to talk about your divisional rival. They've traded out of the number one pick to the Carolina Panthers, receiving the Panthers' first round pick this year, so a pick swap there. A second rounder in this year's draft, a first rounder next year, a second rounder in 2025, and they've got DJ Moore. And they went wild yesterday. They brought in TJ Edwards, linebacker formerly of Philadelphia Eagles, Tremaine Edmonds, middle linebacker formerly of the Buffalo Bills, and Nate Davis, a guard from the Tennessee Titans, who are all three of them seen as very, very good players within the league. What was your reaction, Adam, at being a Packers fan for the Bears trade, firstly? Because I think we knew it was coming, but also the fact that this Bears team is not scared this offseason. They have got money to burn, and they're not burning it. I don't think. They've made three very smart decisions with these players so far.
I think with the trade specifically, so we actually put something out on our Twitter page, basically, who do you think kind of won it, sort of thing. Everyone went the Bears. Everyone. It feels to me a little bit. That's the price you pay if you want to go from 9th to 1st. I don't really feel like there was much difference between that and what the 49ers paid for when they went from 12th to 3rd. It feels very similar when it comes to draft picks. So it's kind of like that is just what you pay. The only thing that I feel the Bears probably did get a little bit on top was DJ Moore. I think that's the reason that you might feel that they did a little bit better than some of the previous ones. We've seen Moore, haven't we, play in the NFL for a few years now. He's clearly a very, very talented wide receiver. Has been very unlucky, I think, with the quarterback situation that he's had in Carolina. And if he can have maybe a bit more of a steady situation with someone like Justin Fields, I think that will be a very good thing for him. Although I do, you do still question a little bit when it comes to Fields, because obviously a lot of what you've seen has all been with his legs. He's still a very talented quarterback, but I think you just need to see it more than anything else. And I think you could probably argue that the reason it was mainly with his legs was because there was no one to throw it to. So I think it's a bit 50-50 on that one, that people are coming out and saying. when it comes to the free agents, they're good players. They're spending a lot of money on players that, I don't know. It feels like a lot of money for some of these guys. They're all right. They're not bad.
They did for what Roquan Smith wanted. They got 2 very good linebackers for the same price.
Yeah, and neither of them are of the talent of Roquan Smith. So I suppose it depends how you want to look at it. That's the problem. That's where I think you've got to be. It depends what you want, and I suppose they are a team with a lot of holes, and so they need to fill them holes. And so maybe having, the sum of all parts is going to be better than the one individual. So maybe that's the way that they're going for it. I think, these Tremaine Edmonds, I think, has been great in Buffalo, but he's had everything was to his advantage in Buffalo. I feel it's like you couldn't have asked for a better situation. It's not going to be like that in Chicago. So that it's that kind of thing. It's very much that. But I think it was kind of a fair trade, to be honest.
When the lid on the pasta pot boils over with all the water, that was like Andrew's cap when he started talking about Justin Fields. He was so ready to be coming to his defense so quickly, because he is your guy, Andrew. You love yourself a bit of Justin Fields. Do you think he's pretty happy that he's got, in my opinion, a number 1 wide receiver to be able to throw to, and also with also the other acquisitions that the Bears team have made?
Yeah, he's got to be really pleased with how it's going forward for him now. After last year, it seemed like they were just making his life more difficult in previous years for him, and sort of giving him no help and no O-line and no receivers. And it seems like they're just checking all the boxes now and giving him a chance. And there's a lot of people out there. I know Gareth always likes to wind me up and go, he's a good running back, isn't he? But a lot of people didn't see what he did at college, and he threw the ball a hell of a lot at college. He threw for like over 5,000 yards at college, and he wasn't predominantly running the ball. I don't think he's particularly had thousands of rushing yards for Ohio. It came from his arm and how well he could throw the ball. So he's definitely got the talent there. It's nice to see that they're bringing people in, and he's got all the chance now to really cement that and take control, because that's a young team now, isn't it? There's a lot of youngsters there now, and it could look like they could get something going. Adam says they paid over the odds for some people, but they've got the money to spend, and why not bring in some veteran heads to lead some of these youngsters, because they've got some more draft capital to bring in some more youngsters as well. So I like what they're doing. And when you're talking about winners and losers, I think people only talk about a loser for the Panthers, because yes, they've moved up and got that first spot, but they've really, I don't feel like their team's overly strong. And I think that's why people are saying they've lost. They've lost their number 1 wide receiver to go and get a quarterback, and left themselves very, very, very short at wide receiver. I think that's why people may say they lost the trade, because there isn't a lot there in terms of offense really at all. So is a quarterback going to end up going to a team that's a Justin Fields situation from previous, essentially?
So, I've got, but there's nothing really coming in at the minute. We've seen Emmanuel Mosley's just signed for the Lions. Nothing really happening. Plenty of rumours obviously knocking around as per usual. But maybe we should look at some of the free agent signings that we've maybe really liked, or some that maybe some of the teams we're maybe a bit worried about. I'll sort of start off. Jesse Bates going to the Atlanta Falcons and Von Bell going to the Carolina Panthers. I think both teams have done fantastically there, getting 2 very, very top safeties. My issue is I worry for the Cincinnati Bengals, who have been touching distance year on year and had a really solid defense. It gives Dax Hill, I suppose, an opportunity to really come into his own. He's been very good for them. What do you guys think about that in terms of for the Cincinnati Bengals and for both of these players going to these new teams?
I think it's a big loss for them. Jesse Bates, especially, I think that's a massive, massive loss. I would say that it was probably the secondary that people said was the issue at the Bengals. That was where they needed more depth and more strength. And to lose 2 of your veteran players that have really played extremely well over the last couple of years in that rebuild, I think it does kind of put some question marks on what's happening. But again, they've got a first round pick. It seems to be working for them. They've got their offense sort of sorted and locked in, so they can focus on spending some time. There's a lot, the depth of cornerbacks, and there's some talented safeties as well in this draft. They can go out and get 2 in the first 2 rounds if they wanted it, and they'll be coming away with players that are good enough to start straight away. So I'm not worried in the sense that they can now go and focus on that because their offense is so good.
Going on to you, Adam, we'll move off that. So we'll just go through a lot of the ones that we've got. Javon Hargrave going to the San Francisco 49ers. Incredibly solid defense, just gets even better. Maybe we just talked about the Eagles as well in this, because they have now lost a couple of players who were really good on that defense last year. Javon Hargrave, Chauncey Gardner-Johnson still not gone anywhere just yet. I mean, he could still resign for the Philadelphia Eagles. TJ Edwards obviously going as well. How do you feel about after Javon Hargrave, the 49ers just solidifying what is already such a fierce defense?
Yeah, the 49ers need a bit more help, don't they, on the defensive line? Yeah, I mean, it's a great move for them. Who did they get rid of? Was it McGlinchey? I think they got rid of
McGlinchey, who's gone to Denver.
Yeah, he's gone to Denver and kind of replaced him. I think they've probably got a bet, done well there, because I think McGlinchey can kind of dip in and out a bit, whereas I feel like from what we saw of Hargrave last year, if he can do that, then that's going to be very good for them. Eagles, it's a bit worrying, isn't it, with some of these defensive players that they brought in. It feels very much like they went all in for the year with some of these guys. There's a lot of talk of Bradbury going. There's Gardner-Johnson, looks like he's going to go.
They're both free agents. They could get re-signed.
Yeah,
they're free for anyone to sign at the minute, really.
So it is a little bit difficult to see them being able to keep up to the level that they were. I think having someone like Hargrave, Edwards as well, wasn't it? Was there as well? Edwards, yeah. TJ Edwards was there, who's gone to Chicago. The reason that defense did so well, especially on the line, was because they kept on rotating so much. And I feel like that is something that obviously, they're probably going to the draft. They've got 2 first-round picks. So there's no reason why they can't bring in guys and replace them. They're just not as tested, obviously, as the previous ones. I think Jason Kelce coming back is huge for them. I think that's a massive plus for them. Brandon Graham's come back for another year, so that's positive as well. But it just puts a few question marks over them at the moment, I think.
I'm just seeing if there's any Aaron Rodgers.
No, it's not going to happen.
It's not going to happen today, is it? They've got more hoops to jump through. They haven't completed yet.
Yeah,
not completed the whole one yet.
They might need to get Jordy Nelson out of retirement, maybe.
Ray Jennings, Michael Finley,
get them all out. Yeah.
Ty Montgomery, will have him come back.
Well, speaking of one player with age not on his side, really, Patrick Peterson, Andrew, going to the Pittsburgh Steelers. Everyone was saying we should have re-signed Cam Sutton. Cam Sutton gets signed by the Detroit Lions. A little bit of panic for Pittsburgh Nation about what we're going to do about corner. We're going to have to take corner in the draft now in the first round. Then Patrick Peterson, who was outstanding at the Vikings last year, has been signed last season, immediately becomes cornerback 1 for the Pittsburgh Steelers.
Yeah, and I think he's become that guy that kind of, when you talk about free agency and him when he moves, people always go, get him in the building, because he's the perfect person to learn from. You always hear that. I heard it when he went to the Vikings as well. They were like, get him in, they can learn from him. And I think that's perfect for you. You've now covered that position with an absolutely incredible talent, and all signs point towards you going corner in the draft. So you're going to get an exceptional youngster. Like I said, these guys are extremely talented, and he's going to learn from one of the best. For me, that's a great situation. So I big tick for the Steelers for that one for me.
I've just seen a tweet as well saying that it was a reaction to Cam Sutton not coming back. From sounds of it, Steelers were very convinced he was going to come back and then didn't, and they were maybe floundering a little bit. But luckily, someone like Peterson was on free agency to be able to go and get him. Michael Thomas re-signing with the Saints. That happened in the last couple of hours. Adam, wide receivers really struggled with injury for the last few years, but has got a pretty decent quarterback now at the New Orleans Saints. With Derek Carr decided to sign for the New Orleans Saints. Saints fans should be happy so far. Bring back Thomas, got in Derek Carr, not really lost loads of players in key positions, I suppose. I mean, the big anomaly, and I don't want to go dip down the rabbit hole completely on this, is what is happening.
Go on, you know you want to. Come on.
We haven't got a clue what's happening with Alvin Kamara, do we yet? So that's also some news that the Saints fans are really waiting on. But are Saints fans happy at this point in free agency so far?
I don't know, to be honest, if they are or not. I mean, it's an improvement.
Would you be if you were a Saint? Would you be if you were a Saint?
It's an improvement. I'll give him that. Derek Carr is obviously an improvement on Jameis Winston or Andy Dalton. I think that's fairly obvious. So I think we can say that. Michael Thomas coming back for another year. I mean, he hasn't done anything in so long now. It feels a little bit like, what's the point? I think I suppose they haven't got a first round pick this year, so they're not going to get a great wide receiver. So maybe that's why they've done it, just to have him there.
They got
they gave it up to the Broncos.
No, the Broncos gave it.
They got it off the Broncos.
Oh, I went the wrong way around, did I? Okay, fair enough.
It's a low pick because it wasn't.
So I mean, they might be able to pick one up there, but even then, it's what is it, 29, something like that. So I think that might be quite
it's 29
a tough one to pick up. I don't know. I think they're in a big sort of like rebuild, aren't they, at the moment? And it feels like it's just going to carry on. And I don't see Derek Carr being the one who makes the difference, to be honest. I think it's just going to keep going for a while longer yet. And it's, like I said, I think it's better than what it was last year, but I wouldn't expect too much from him this year.
Who else? What else have we had moving around? I mean, Jimmy G to the Raiders. The Raiders fans were probably quite happy about 3 hours ago with Jimmy G in as a quarterback, Jacoby Myers. There could be more magic like there was last season with him. You've got Darren Waller, got Devontae Adams, then Waller's gone. With their pick where it is in the draft, Andrew, the Raiders, I mean, though they've brought in Jimmy G, some would argue the ultimate bridge quarterback, do you think they are maybe willing to take maybe a risk on an Anthony Richardson in the draft, considering it is still a high pick and they could still go in that quarterback direction?
There's too many holes there, isn't there? You can't. You brought in Jimmy G. You can't then go first round pick quarterback and then go, we've got no O-line. We've got, we've lost people. The dressing room's sort of getting a bit aggy. We're seeing that they didn't bring back. They've upset Jacobs, haven't they? So I don't know. I feel like they've got to address the O-line. If regardless if you want to bring in Anthony Richardson or whatever, you've got to address that O-line. So they're gonna have to look at the draft for that, aren't they? So I don't know. I'd be pretty. You would have been happy, wouldn't you, at the start when you got Jimmy G going, oh yeah, okay, at least we've got someone. But to lose Waller, I think that's a big loss for them. I'm shocked that they even took the trade, considering it wasn't for much either. So I don't know. I'm out on them. I haven't really got an opinion on them because I just feel like they're not going anywhere. They're not going backwards. They're not going forwards. They're just being the Raiders, and that's a shame.
Is it a shame? I mean, it's the Raiders being the Raiders, isn't it? I love to have a go at the Raiders. What they've done is they've created the perfect marriage for me. They've brought in the quarterback who can't win for the team who can't do anything. This is brilliant. It's money, isn't it? He's going to be a lot cheaper this year than whatever Derek Carr was going to be. I think Derek Carr was going to cost them something like the first year, it was like 70 million or something crazy. And then it was going to be like less over the next few years that they had left. Whereas for under this contract with Jimmy G, it's something like 30 something. So it's not as bad for them, which has basically meant that they can bring in people like Jacoby Myers and sort of done stuff like that. So I think that's the logic behind it. I don't think it changes anything, though. I think you're probably looking at two quarterbacks that are basically the same.
I've just seen a great tweet saying, exchange for Derek Carr and Darren Waller, Josh McDaniels received the 100th pick. Like, that's it. It tells the story, doesn't it? It does tell the story.
Well, that's what we've just said. They got nothing for Waller. They couldn't keeping him was probably a better plan. I suppose it leaves them that they could maybe get a Hendon Hooker or Max Duggan, take a risk on Duggan, or Stetson Bennett later on. If they want to, maybe Hendon Hooker, I think will probably be the more sensible one. You know, let him recover from that injury, and then see if he can produce what he did at Tennessee, and they could introduce a quarterback into the building for the future that way. But yeah, it's not great.
I think our final subject will be, unless something big does happen in the next couple of minutes, but I think we should end on this. And really, it's about someone who hasn't signed anything yet. It came out today in a tweet, it looks like from Lamar Jackson, that he got offered 3 years and 100+ million. I had the exact tweet a moment ago how much money it was, but I've now since lost the tweet. But it was a 3-year contract worth 100 million plus. Had the non-exclusive franchise tag slapped on him by the Baltimore Ravens. He does represent himself. He is his own agent, so this is why things may be taking a little bit of time with Lamar. But teams could go out there and offer him big money, and the Ravens would have to match. That's how non-exclusive tag works. For people who don't know, is that teams can go offer him a contract. If he doesn't want it there, the Ravens do have to match it. So, I mean, there's the NFL teams maybe have a bit of an agreement, but you don't just go and offer someone ridiculous money because the team has to then match it. I suppose there's probably a non-verbal agreement amongst the NFL teams with that. But how shocked are you, Andrew, with this Lamar Jackson saga? Because it feels like it's just going on and on. It feels like much like Rodgers with the Jets and the Packers. It feels like this Lamar Jackson with the Baltimore Ravens. It seems to be to and fro in Eric DeCosta, their GM. He's keeping a lot of his cards to his chest. I think he's wanting to do the right thing for the Ravens as well as for Lamar, I suppose. Where do you land on all this with Lamar Jackson?
I honestly didn't see him still being there. As soon as the way it ended last year and him not coming back to the team or traveling with them, and obviously with the contract issues still then, I automatically thought he wasn't going to be back in the building, and we wouldn't be sat here talking about him still being there. I thought he would have been traded. I thought he would have gone. I thought they would have looked in a different direction. Obviously, they got rid of Greg Roman. So I was like, well, they're obviously going to start wanting to throw the ball a bit more. They're changing what they're doing at the Ravens. So, yeah, I'm really shocked we're having the conversation. He's still there and could be playing for that team. I thought they'd move in a different direction or try something else. So, yeah, that's really shocked me for just from that standpoint.
And where do you land on it, Adam? Because the guy's talented, right? I mean, they win more with him in the team. They win a lot more with him in the team. And I know there's a little bit of a thing of he misses a lot of games, but I think I saw a stat somewhere in the last 3 or 4 years he's missed 33% of games, which is it's a small fraction of games really for 4 seasons.
Well, I mean, he's stopping you from getting in the playoffs, though. So, I mean, certainly the last 2 years, he's missed 33% of games. I mean, if you're missing that many games and you're having to rely on a backup to get you through, I mean, it's a fairly decent chunk of games to miss. I mean, you know, it's going to stop you from not only potentially ending up in the playoffs, but it's going to stop you from getting a really high pick as well. You're not going to be like the number 1 seed because you've just lost your star quarterback for 6 games. So it is a really big thing. I must admit, I'm a little surprised he's still there. I thought that, but he can't do anything at the moment, can he? Because he doesn't have an agent, so he's not allowed to actually negotiate with anyone until tomorrow afternoon, I think it is. So maybe something will happen after that. I think he will just carry on. He will keep going and going. I think you've got a good chance if he ends up staying there, he doesn't play, and he will just keep going until they have to release him and he gets out on the open market, because he's got it in his head that he should be getting a Deshaun Watson style contract, which I think everyone has kind of come out and said that's a bit of a, an anomaly. It's not something that you're going to get again. But that seems to be what he wants, and he wants something like that. So yeah, I mean, we'll have to see. It might take a bit longer with him if anything does happen, but I think there is a good chance that he doesn't play if he stays.
That contract of Deshaun Watson's been completely restructured already, hasn't it?
Yeah.
So
yeah, today,
today
or yesterday. Yeah,
and I think the NFL has come together again in a non-verbal way and gone, right, they went and did that, and it was ridiculous, and no one else should do that or do that. We need to stand together here, and we'll reset the quarterback market ourselves.
Well, they haven't done that, but they have done that. If you know what I mean. So
Now, Ian Rappaport, the latest signing is Rashard Penny, running back formerly of the Seattle Seahawks, has just agreed terms with the Philadelphia Eagles. Ian Rappaport, I would love you to come on our show one day, but tweets like this is nonsense. In short stints, Rashard Penny has been one of the best backs in football. Ridiculous. Averaging over 6 yards per carry. Ridiculous. It's what you do with the carries. Philly lands a back with big time upside. Come on.
Yeah.
Can we not? We're not putting ourselves with Rashard Penny is a big time back.
So hang on a minute. Are you telling me that you want Ian Rappaport to come on here so you can critique his tweets? Is that where we're going?
No, I'm just saying the chances of him coming on get slim when he makes statements like that. That's more my problem. Like, I don't know who Benjamin Solak is, and again, Benjamin, who's a writer for The Ringer. Penny is a better runner than Miles Sanders. A healthy Penny is going to lead the league in rushing yards with Philly. Ridiculous. That's ridiculous.
Didn't Penny last year? Penny was pretty good, wasn't he? Until he got
injured. No, he's good every year. He's fit. Anytime he's on the field, fit, he's good.
He just always gets injured.
He's only good for about 4 or 5 games, and that's
to say that he's better than Miles Sanders is ridiculous.
No, I like Miles Sanders. I think he does his job well. I think that, what more do you want? I like Miles Sanders. Stays fit, plays well. Sanders. But again, that's another player that the Eagles are losing.
Okay, another one, and this is just touching on a little bit of fantasy football. Is Rashard Penny a dynasty running back one now that he signed with the Eagles?
No.
Adam, what were you going to say?
He's gone to the Eagles. Or were you talking about Miles Sanders?
I was talking about Miles Sanders, yeah.
You're talking about Miles Sanders, right? Yeah, no, I wouldn't say he is. Because he won't. The problem is in the same way with Sanders, in the same way with anyone at the Eagles, you probably won't get a sort of RB1 style running back from them because Hurts will take most of the rushing touchdowns. Also, you're going to struggle, aren't you? There's different guys. Boston Scott, I think, is meant to be coming back. There's a lot of talk about that. I know Sanders guys. They were heavily linked to Bijan Robinson, in the draft. So whether this might stop that, I don't know. But they were linked to bringing someone like him in. I don't think so. I think he's going to be. There's going to be too many mouths to feed right there.
I just think it's a lot of hype for Rashard Penny. That's my issue.
It is.
Well, we haven't had anything for 20 minutes, so we got to keep it.
Oh, we have. Matt Breed has re-signed with the New York Giants. What are you on about? Big news.
Sorry, we haven't had anything exciting for 20 minutes, so we've got to keep it going.
And I also, just briefly on Adam's little touchdown, I think Bijan might go. Well, everyone's got a touted going at the back end to some of those players. I think he's going before that. I think people have noticed his talent, and he's going to go up a lot higher than you think. I've also think that if I'm the Bears, I'm taking him at 9.
Oh, it's such a stretch. I think.
I think
I can't go for
that. If I'm the Chargers and I've just got rid of Eckler, I'm taking him and trading up for him.
I could pay for that. Steelers did that in the G Harris. We took him. Yeah, earlier than some people thought he should. I'd try
also, one other thing with Detroit, how many mocks have we seen where there is always corner? Like sick pick is always corner. They've just taken Cam Sutton and Emmanuel Mosley, so unlikely, I think. So yeah, maybe your Jalen Carter prediction might be coming true, Fred.
I completely forgot. Just put into context, I said that the Lions could now get Jalen Carlton, was really like that. That could really happen now. And then did a mock and they had the Bears taken. And everyone obviously ridiculed me for saying the Lions. I had the Lions taking him, but I did completely forget. But I thought that Carter was going to land at the Lions, which I think is definitely a possibility. I think that could be it could be very interesting, very slippery slope. Well, we're going to end it all here. We're going to finish up because there seems to be no news coming in and we only have obviously a finite amount of time. However, we will be back next week for more of the free agency frenzy and more stuff about that. I'm sure a hell of a lot will have happened from this point to next week. I'm sure some more mocks are coming out soon as well with Andrew and Adam, which have been very, very good fun to watch as well. I was suddenly another big announcement, but it wasn't. It was a nobody player, but I'm not bothered about talking about at this point. Thank you very much for watching, and thank you for joining us this evening. Make sure you catch us all on YouTube and on our social media channel. We'll be back very soon for more Franchise Tag Podcast. Until then, have a good rest of your week and keep an eye on that Aaron Rodgers trade.